Welcome to today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro. And today we're going to be talking about having the hard conversations. And having the hard conversations is something that we're all terrified of for various reasons. I want to start by saying that having hard conversations is a learnt skill, and it's something that you can learn to get better at over time. I certainly have, and now I find them a growth opportunity for myself and for the person who I'm having the difficult conversation with. Difficult conversations are conversations that we perhaps are feeling anxious about, but are also scared of having because we're unsure of the outcome, or we know that we're about to tell someone something that they don't want to hear. And that's always going to be unnerving. So how do you approach difficult conversations? I find for myself, in a lot of the work that I've done, both in my early days as an associate, doing an associate diploma as a counselor, and in the years since then, in my own personal growth, I found that I pretty much had to have the conversation with myself before I had the conversation with the person. So I had to get some clarity around understanding why I needed to have this conversation and what I was looking to get out of the conversation. It's very important to go into difficult conversations with a clear understanding of what the objective is for you and what the objective is for the other person. The other thing is, go in understanding what the desired outcome is for everyone involved. And going in knowing what you're aiming for will give you a better understanding of how you're going to get there. All of these things are ways of preparing yourself for a conversation that you don't want to have, but the preparedness the effort that you put into being prepared will help you have the confidence that you need to execute the conversation with professionalism. Let's just say that. So, assertiveness is an important part of having uncomfortable conversations. Now, assertiveness is not aggression. Assertiveness is not being passive. Assertiveness is somewhere exactly in the middle of that. So assertiveness is being able to communicate with clarity, fairly, concisely, knowing what you're saying, meaning what you're saying, and saying what you mean. It's going in there without a veiled agenda. So an important part of having an uncomfortable conversation is assertive communication. So, for example, if you need to advise an employee that has continuously been turning up to work late, there's an assertive way to do that without talking shit to them, without making them feel terrible, without you feeling terrible either. So this leads me to the next part of uncomfortable conversations, which is have pre-established boundaries with the people that you're going to be communicating with, if this is an employee or an employer. So and we spoke about this at the Cafe Owners Workshop on the weekend, having boundaries helps you establish a culture. Having boundaries and culture helps you when it comes to difficult conversations, because everybody knows where those boundaries are, and when they cross them, then they know that this conversation's coming because you've made them pre-warned of what the consequence of crossing boundaries is. So if you are in a situation where you have to talk to an employee who has been late, and I apologize, my phone's blowing up over there, but if you are talking to an employee who is late, sitting them down, respectfully talking to them and treating them as though they're an adult, although adults typically shouldn't be turning up to work on late on a repetitive basis. But speak to them as an adult, remind them of the boundary, tell them what the consequence of them turning up to late again is, and then stick to that consequence. It's important for you as a leader to have boundaries. It's important to communicate those boundaries, and it helps you out when you're having difficult conversations. Now, another one is, let's say you have an employee or you have an employer who is not meeting the standards of what you both, that you believe they should be meeting. So if your employer is letting you down by not leading, and your employee is not showing up the way that they agreed to show up, having a conversation like that can be really challenging and fills you with anxiety. In those situations, again, have the conversation with yourself before you have the conversation with somebody else. Once you've had the conversation in your own mind and, gone over all the different directions that the conversation might go into, let it go. And then show up to the conversation with an open heart and an open mind, prepared for the fact that it could go any way, but the confidence of your intention with the conversation. And remember that if you're going in there to hammer anyone, make anyone feel like shit, it's never going to work. It's never going to be a good outcome for anybody. The hope is that you go into a conversation and you get a win-win for everybody. Even the difficult conversations should be aiming for a win-win for everybody. In this example, if you are speaking to an employer who has been letting you down, or an employee who has been letting you down because neither of them are showing up to the job that they said that they would be doing properly, you communicating your position assertively and with clarity, with an open heart and an open mind, means that you're bringing an awareness to that person that they perhaps weren't open to. And nobody likes to know that they're doing a shit job. I never liked it if ever, on the rare occasion someone would say to me, hey, what's going on? It usually was that I was going through a difficult time in my life and I was trying very hard to make sure that that wasn't bleeding through into my professional life, and I was unaware that it was. And so when you're having a conversation with somebody and you need to tell them something uncomfortable, the importance of going in with an open heart and an open mind is that you are completely unaware of all the mitigating circumstances that have led them to that. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to let them walk all over you. It doesn't mean that they're going to have their job by the end of that. And it doesn't mean that you'll continue to work with them after that. But a positive outcome doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stay working for somebody or have someone staying working for you just because you've told them something uncomfortable and you want to be respectful of their discomfort. It just means that a positive outcome needs to happen where everybody wins. And when you're aspiring to that, then we're all great. Then if we could get everybody in the coffee industry approaching these conversations with grace and I don't mean like a religious grace there, I mean with a sense of openness, open-heartedness and open-mindedness, not wanting to tear each other down. That to me is grace. There's a sense of respect for some and a willingness to want to respect somebody else's dignity in them hearing something very difficult. I have these kinds of conversations with people all the time. It never gets easy. I want you to know that. But it does I do have more confidence in approaching these conversations. I have to, if anyone was listening to yesterday's podcast, I'm having a conversation today with somebody who I believe is connected to the perpetrator of those acts, for lack of a better term. And it's going to be a very uncomfortable conversation. But I've rehearsed it, and it may go in no way similarly to the ways in which I think it will go. But I at least know how I'm going to start the conversation, and I'm confident in that. I'm also very confident in the information that I've got and how I'm going to approach this situation. I'm going in with an open heart and an open mind. I'm still terrified of having the conversation, but I've got the confidence in the fact that I've done it a number of times and I'm a big girl. I'll be able to do it. So I wanted to talk about how to have hard conversations, because I believe that we need to step into that. We need to step into learning how to get comfortable as an industry, having some very uncomfortable conversations, and learning how to receive someone initiating an uncomfortable conversation. And if two people can come to an uncomfortable conversation and bring themselves with grace, I believe that a win-win outcome is inevitable. It just has to be. It's called mature communication, and I worry sometimes when I hear a lot of stories that people tell me that if we could invite people to have open, difficult conversations, recognizing that they're difficult, recognizing that they're uncomfortable, and that that's normal, people won't freak out. People won't fall apart and have anxiety attacks over them. Because you not being willing to have an uncomfortable or difficult conversation with someone doesn't help you. It doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you be challenged. It doesn't help your business grow. It doesn't help your career grow. And it doesn't help us as an industry sort shit out that I think we really need to start getting about the business of sorting out quickly. So that's the end of today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro. If you have any questions or comments, please leave your comments in the comment section below. You can now watch the Daily Coffee Pro every day at 3 o'clock, every weekday at 3 o'clock on our website, mapitforward.org/live, or here on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/mapitforward. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody, and look after each other.